Alice Kyteler, Conflict and Compromise.
Alice Kyteler, a name not known to many, began the infamous European witch trials. She married 3 times and collected the fortune of each of her husbands upon their passing. Each of her husbands were all seemingly healthy and young before their demise, leading to her eventual accusation of being a witch. However, she had friends in high places, leading what would have been a simple papal law case to intermix with the time's secular law. Alice Kyteler was known to be persecuted under the papal law of her time. However, secular and papal law intersected in her case through a series of family conflicts. This led to the conflict and compromise of the 2 opposing law systems to persecute the infamous witch of Kilkenny.
Alice's background life.
She moved to Kilkenny in 1280 and was an only child. She grew up to be a successful innkeeper and moneylender. She was the first person condemned of witchcraft in Ireland and the first person to be sentenced to death because of witchcraft. This was the first kind of this case in Europe.
Kilkenny is a striking city and has a reputation for being Ireland's pre-eminent medieval city, with its ancient streetscapes and many medieval buildings clearly illustrating this.
Alice's case.
She was accused by some of her children, specifically those who were fathered by her 2nd and 3rd husbands. These children said that she had poisoned and used sorcery on her following husbands due to favoritism of her first husband's child, William Outlaw. Richard Ledrede, Bishop of Ossory, had the case brought to him. He accused Alice of witchcraft and went to imprison her. Alice, however, had connections in high places. Her former brother-in-law, the chancellor of the time, ended up imprisoning the bishop instead. Eventually, after a few days, the bishop was freed, this time with a vengeance for Alice. After taking her to court, she was accused of witchcraft. Her son William was given a penance of mass 3 times a day. Alice, however, had a worse fate. She was sentenced to be burned for her transgressions. While in jail, however, she managed to escape, never to be heard from again. Her servants, however, did not receive such a blessing. Most famously, Petronilla de Maith, her maidservant, was burned at stake in her place.
The law of the time.
Upon a trial, the individual has a month to confess. Should a person confess, their membership to the Catholic Church would be taken away for a little while. If you didn't confess, you would be tortured and your membership would be taken forever.
In Alice's case, the canon, also known as papal law of the time, was a Romano-canonical law. This meant that harsh punishments were expected for transgressions. The infamous Inquisition came to be in this time period. In trials of heresy, power abuse was common. Alice, having been tried for witchcraft and heresy among other things, was stuck on the receiving end of this stick from the start. Canonists, the law enforcement of the time, worked in the service of bishops and such. In sharp contrast, the secular law at the time was divided into 3 sections based on the severity of the crime. The law was led by the king at the time, not a religious figure. In the original court proceedings post-bishop's release, led by the bishop, the effect of the conflict and compromise in the case becomes clear. In the bishop's writings, he details that his power comes from God. However, Alice's original punishment is excommunication for 40 days. The trial's conflict comes in, bridging the gap between the 2 law systems in a way to persecute Alice without causing religious strife. The compromise comes in when Alice is excommunicated rather than immediately murdered by the canon law at the time, which is what heresy would have called for.
Conflict and compromise. The conclusion.
Alice Kyteler demonstrates conflict and compromise through a series of events in her life that resulted in the mixture of papal and secular law. While papal law accused her, secular law helped define her punishment. This event is similar to a mixture of rules that happened in America, an event that involved condemning innocent women for witchcraft. The Salem witch trials involves conflict and compromise by having the constant conflict and paranoia of the people and the church authorities that ended in the compromise of the law and the morals of the people. The law compromised when trials ended when the governor's wife was accused, but he chose not to prosecute, thus ending the reign of terror.
That insolent fiend, Robert Artisan, to whom the lovelorn lady Kyteler brought bronzed peacock feathers, red combs of her cocks,